Many years ago, in the middle of the 20th century, America asked a young man to go to war. It was the time of the Second World War. The United States was engaged in World War II from December 7th, 1941 until August of 1945. It was a conflict which left few places on earth untouched. It was fought on all the oceans, in all the skies, on tropical islands, and in ancient cities. When that young man went off to war, he left his home, his family, his school, his job. He didn't know it at the time, perhaps, but this ordinary, everyday American, and millions like him, were being asked to save the world. This young man became a member of the U.S. Navy. In this war, the oceans of the world were critical battlefields. Men struggled on the sea and under the sea, from the warm waters of the South Pacific to the cold, gray waters of the North Atlantic, and all the oceans in between. I'm Walter Cronkite. I believe we owe that Navy veteran, your families, veteran of World War II, an enormous debt of gratitude. We should never forget his courage, his sense of duty, his sacrifice. His contributions made possible the freedoms and life we all too often take for granted. I was a correspondent during that war, the last war in which great navies fought great sea battles. Despite all that's happened in the years since, I can assure you nothing's made a bigger impression on me than the willingness of those young American soldiers and sailors to go beyond the call of duty. Because of their determination, America itself was changed, and the world as we know it today was born. I consider it a great honor to introduce the story your veteran would tell of his contribution to America's role in World War II. It's his story, told by him in his words, and it's part of American history. Listen to this story and remember it. He's dedicating it to you, his family, and to all his descendants. This is the best part of our nation's heritage. It's real. It's the story of one veteran, one of those everyday heroes who saved the world. Honor him as I do.
On June 6, 1944, the Americans, Canadians, and British troops landed at Normandy, France. The Americans penetrated German defenses and began a fast and determined thrust across France towards the north and east. Hundreds of thousands of Germans were taken prisoner. American air forces had complete control of the air. By December 1, there was a line of American divisions entrenched in the Ardennes forest on the border of Belgium and Luxembourg, not far from the borders of Germany itself. A week before Christmas, the weather turned bad with snow and fog, forcing American aircraft to stay on the ground at their bases. Two entire German armies suddenly attacked the Americans, forcing a giant bulge in the line of divisions. In one of the great land battles of the war, over 600,000 Americans were engaged in trying to regain their positions and stop the German advance. Finally, after weeks of fierce fighting, the weather cleared and American warplanes attacked the German armies from the air, and transports dropped supplies to the American forces which had been cut off. The Battle of the Bulge was over, and the Americans resumed their drive into Germany. In Italy, the Americans landed at Anzio, 20 miles south of Rome. In fierce fighting that lasted for months against German forces, the American army finally broke out and moved toward the capture of Rome itself. In the Pacific, the American Navy's fast aircraft carrier task forces and superior naval air forces led attacks which pushed the Japanese forces out of the island chains they had taken.
Well, I was inducted into the Navy on April 4th, 1944. I was drafted. I had to report to that place where all the draftees had to report, and either were accepted or rejected. And I was accepted in the Navy. I was 35 years old when I went into service. And I was competing with young boys, 17, 18 years old. And you know, that's hard to do at 35. I went to boot camp in Sampson, New York. I went up there, it was in April. It snowed every day I was up there. I was up there for maybe 20, 25 days, and it snowed every day. We were waiting for springtime, and here came the snow all the time. And it was pretty rigorous, my boot camp training. Well, you know what it is, up every morning, 5 o'clock, the grinder, which is, we run around the lake every morning, just to shape us up, but it's pretty tough for a guy that's 35 years old. It lasted about 25 days, and I met a lot of young boys, a lot of nice people. After 25 days, I was discharged. I came home. As I told you, I was assigned to a destroyer, the Davis, USS Davis, 395. And that's a story in itself, because every place they sent me to pick up the destroyer, it had just left. It went up and down the East Coast, and I kept chasing it by train. I caught up to it in Casco Bay, Maine. My duty was on the bridge. I was a quartermaster, 3rd class. That's celestial navigation and occasionally steering the ship. It was very good duty. I stayed in the Atlantic for the whole length of time that I was on this destroyer. I think it used to take us 18 days for a return, a round trip back to New York. And all I had to do was walk to 4th Avenue in Brooklyn, and with a token, I got on the BMT and got off at 14th Street, New York, and got on the IRT and came home to the Bronx and to my family. I had a daughter. She was 5 years old at the time. And that was good getting home every 18 days, because I had to report to my ship every morning. You know, if I had the duty, I had to be there. This Army base in Brooklyn, which loaded up many of Liberty ships that we took over to Europe and dropped them off at England, Liverpool, Southampton, Le Havre, and Germany. Actually, all my service was on convoy duty in the Atlantic. And we were assigned with another destroyer. I think her name was the Somers, plus 6 destroyer escorts. We'd escort all these Liberty ships to Europe. We went to Southampton. We've been in Le Havre. We've never been in Italy. But we used to dispatch quite a few of the ships in our convoy to Italy from the English Channel. We did a little submarine detection service up there with an Italian submarine that had come over to our side. We had some sonar contacts, you know, with the submarine, but nothing ever developed because I think, you know, it was 6 U.S. destroyer escorts and 2 regular destroyers. With all those cans that we were dropping on them, they never monkeyed too much with us. In fact, I'm very proud to say that the length of time I was on this tin can, we never lost a merchant ship. I remember one submarine contact where, you know, the convoy is protected by my ship at the head and the Somers in the rear, and the 6 destroyer escorts would circle the whole convoy. And when we got this sonar contact, you can't believe so many ships could disperse in less than 10 minutes. There'd be not a ship out there that you know there was anywhere from 50 to 55 ships in this convoy. And they'd all disappear. You couldn't believe that they could get away so fast. And the following day, after the contact, everything was back to normal. All the ships were in their position, and we just picked up our convoy duty and escorted them to, most of the times we went into the English Channel. You can't believe all the ships that were sunk in the English Channel. They were all in there. They were all sunk already. Like, well, one time we went in there, at night they dropped these floating mines. The Germans did. You had to be careful you didn't run into them. In fact, we sunk quite a few of them with our 40-millimeter ack-ack gun. Sent them to the bottom of the ocean. So I came ashore, was in Southampton, England. In fact, the skipper of my ship, we used to play baseball on the dock. There was a great big dock. And all the people that lived in Southampton came out to see us play ball. And my skipper occasionally brought out some cases of beer, and gave it to the people that were there watching the ball game. We had a great time. They were wonderful people. Very, very beautiful people. In fact, I could almost see this young lady had a team of horses. You can't believe they were big like our Drysdales. And she acted like they were little poodles. And they obeyed her command. That's how tough they had it there. The women had to work hard as the men. My duty was very boring. There was one incident aboard ship. I didn't know the front end or the back end. And I was underneath these 5-inch mounts. And that's the focuser. Somebody on the loudspeaker was saying, "Clear the focuser, clear the focuser." And I didn't know where the focuser was. And I was standing right on it. I found out what it was when the 2 5-inch guns went off. Wow. It set me on my can. There was a young boy that came aboard us. He was 17 years old. And he couldn't get in by himself. He had to pester his mother so many months for her to sign him into the Navy. And the boy, she signed for him. And his first trip over, we ran into a very, very bad ocean. Very rough. And he was assigned to the Yak-Yak guns. They were 40-millimeter Yak-Yak guns. And one of the waves knocked us over, almost flat on our side, and the force of the water ripped away the whole shell of that 40-millimeter gun. And there were 3 men on station at the time, and they were all gone. We lost them at sea. We wasted almost the whole day going back and forth, zigzagging all over, trying to pick them up again, but we could never find them. I know that the service was good, but to eat on a destroyer was like eating on a seesaw. Your dish would never stay in front of you. Oh, the eating was very good. We had, regular, real, fresh food that we picked up in the States all the time. There was an incident in the Mediterranean. The fellow that bought the food went ashore and he got some lamb and it was tainted. And you can't believe 300 boys or men going to the bathroom at the same time. We all got diarrhea. Oh, man. There was no room in the head anymore. You had to do it over the side. You had to do it over the side. What a terrible thing. They sold us some bad meat. Every time we went into the Mediterranean, them people would come out, greet our ship, they'd buy anything you had. Anything. Shoes, bed sheets, anything. They'd sell them to the Frenchmen. I know, before I went aboard my ship, she was involved in the Normandy beachhead, bringing in those landing ship troops. But I wasn't aboard her then. They had hit a mine in Normandy and had to leave and come back to the States to get fixed up. That's when I picked her up when she came back to the States. I met a lot of nice people. In fact, when we came back, my ship had to be fixed up on account of hitting the mine in Normandy. And that was in Charleston, South Carolina. And we had a ball down there. Oh, man, no duty, just liberty every day. That was great. And I became friends with all these people on the bridge. In fact, I felt like a father to them. They were much younger than me, and I brought them home to see my wife and child. Charleston was a great naval port, and they had a lot of people working in the Navy Yard. And they had thousands of these, it's like an automobile, but it's a house. And they gave it to me for the length of time that I stayed there, and they supplied all the utilities, the linen. All I had to do was pay for the food and have a good time. And I stood down there a whole month. And then D-Day happened, and I came back to New York. That's when I was discharged, on December the 15th, 1945. That was a great day for me and my wife and my child. I came back, I was discharged honorably, and I went right back to work again. When I came back and went back in the post office, I started as a temporary employee. And funny thing about it, I went in the control room in the post office, and all I did was take care of the mail, GI mail, and brought this mail to all these ships that were still going overseas because the war hadn't ended yet. And that was my job for another 15 years. And I put in 30 years in the post office. I did a lot of service for the government.
My wife just came and touched me because I'm getting very sentimental.
I want to dedicate this thing to my wife, Rose. She went through so much trouble without me being home.
Thank you very much.